Mike Blair has been in law enforcement for over 25 years, having started as a deputy sheriff with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department in March of 1995. Mike has served as the chief of police in University Place for 7 years, and then took the position as chief of staff for Sheriff Paul Pastor. Mike's passion for officer wellness and resiliency grew out of tragedy. Pierce County law enforcement agencies lost 10 officers to line-of-duty deaths in the last decade. Mike was asked to take over the Pierce County Sheriff Peer Support Team on the heels of the murder of the deputy sheriff in late 2009. Mike serves in various capacities with Behind the Badge Foundation, which is an incident management team specific to line-of-duty deaths that helps the families process and rebuild their lives afterwards. Mike is working earnestly with the foundation to educate law enforcement professionals about psychological trauma to develop resilience in high-stress environments. Please welcome Mike Blair.
Good morning to the foundation and Leslie. Thank you so much for including me in this. I'm deeply honored to be here today. So I'm going to get right to it. Chris, I was given 12 minutes, so I will try to keep it to that. I'm going to tell a story and hope that I can convey what I feel is an evolution of resiliency in Pierce County law enforcement. I'll take you back to November of 2009. I was a canine sergeant for the sheriff's office. My life consisted of ordering dog food, chasing bad guys, and ordering things that those little critters would chew on when they weren't supposed to. It was a Sunday morning just after 8 a.m. and my pager went off, and it said, call radio. I was being called in. 4 police officers had been shot and killed, murdered in a coffee shop in Parkland. Bombed out to the scene. I won't describe the scene other than I want you to remember this. He's allowed me to say his name, but I won't say it because I don't need to, but there was a young deputy who was a first responder who had arrived and had to clear the building where those four police officers were. When I got there, he was standing along the fence line of Joint Base Lewis McChord, and he was inconsolable. He had his rifle slung. He was in tears, and I noticed it, but you know, we were on a manhunt. We were chasing the murderer. And 42 hours later, he was shot and killed by a Seattle police officer. I went back to work, tried to find some normalcy to that. Those of you who lived in Pierce County then know the impact it had to our community and the safety, the level of what we considered normal in relation to law enforcement and respect. 3 weeks later, two sheriff's deputies from Pierce County were shot, both in the head. One miraculously survived, the other one passed away a week later up in Harborview Medical Center. We went back to work. What do we do after those calls? We go back to work, we handle the next one. It was spring of 10. I was working overtime as a patrol sergeant, day shift. Those of you, there's a patrol sergeant sitting in here right now, and she knows what do you do on overtime on patrol. You get to go work it. You don't have to do all the scheduling and budgeting, and you get to actually out and work patrol. I went to a verbal domestic up in Parkland, just north of Pacific Lutheran University, 116th and Ainsworth area. It was with that deputy who was on the fence line at Joint Base Lewis McChord. And after the call, I said, hey man, how's it going? And he said to me, he goes, my wife tells me to stop crying, suck it up, and act like a man. He asked me for help that day, and I was ill-prepared. He told me that it was affecting his life. It was going to affect his marriage. It affected him every single day. He probably was crying every day. And what did I do? I was a canine sergeant. I had no experience in this. You know, we go to work. I said, dude, that sounds like an ex-wife. He was fired for committing a crime about a year later. And I look back at that as my biggest failure of leadership. And later in 10, I was asked to take over the peer support unit. Peer support is confidential. We're first responders to officer-involved shootings. We provide an element now towards some wellness and resiliency, but at the time, it was just We'd go to a shooting, we'd do a critical incident debrief, and we'd check the box. I look back at when I was first hired on in 95, we lost an officer to a murder up on the hilltop in Tacoma during a drug raid. And members of that raid team experienced life-altering changes in their careers, some terminal misconduct cases, other elements where they suffered. And I always remembered that, even as a young deputy, thinking, what is that connection between exposure to critical incidents and terminal misconduct cases? I have a PhD that is willing to take it to look at this and look at the connection between critical incident response and terminal misconduct. Not even just post-traumatic stress, but terminations. And as I took over peer, I began to realize there was a deeper element to just responding to a scene and providing peer confidentiality. It had to do with wellness and resiliency. So I deeply believe there is a relationship to exposure to critical incidents and not only PTSD, but of course termination, committing crimes. In Pierce County, we've had 10 line-of-duty deaths, 9 murders, 1 accidental line-of-duty death. We've had 4 suicides of police officers, and we've had numerous deaths that have resulted, that are accidental, that have affected the culture of our agency. These are sentinel events that we've had to define ourselves. So nationally, there is a trend towards self-reporting for PTSD and treatment. We have developed I could talk at length on this, and you can talk to me afterwards or at any time. You can call me and I can speak to whatever the programs are. We have a relationship with a treatment center that we have sent 7 people to over the last 2 years. 2 of them were for crimes, unfortunately, but 5 of them were people self-reporting. 25 years ago, what did we do in law enforcement and fire? We just let people blow their careers up. What is the early warning indicators that we can now attach to and create a culture of vulnerability where people are willing to come forward, forget the stigma of needing treatment, and go and get help? I think that's powerful, and I think what we've done is we've created not only the process, but the culture in law enforcement in Pierce County where people are willing to get help. We have a staff psychologist who is so busy with our personnel, she's only accepting Pierce County Sheriff's Department employees for her clientele. 25 years ago, if we would have said we have a psychologist that's so busy with our staff, we would have thought, holy cow, we're crazy. No, we're getting healthy. We've created a confidential process so they can work through me and I'll get them sent back to wherever they need to go. But I also have them able to work directly through the HR, Human Resources Director, so that no one even knows where they are. We had a detective who went back to Deer Hollow, which is in Utah, went back for 35 days. He was the detective who could not get out of bed, having panic attacks, was burning sick leave. He was gonna melt. He came back to work after 35 days, and I went in his office and I said, hey, how's it going? And he said, I can do this job today. And I was good with that, because 35 days prior to that, he couldn't. He's on a path to wellness. He's building his resiliency. And I'm preaching this to new deputies. It is a national trend for self-reporting for help. There's nothing wrong with it. It is phenomenal. It is building that culture of resiliency within the department and also creating a vulnerability at the leadership level where people are comfortable coming forward. Again, my biggest failure was someone asking for help. What I want to pay back is the next generation of Pierce County Sheriff's Department employees being able to complete 35 years of this job and retire happy and healthy. So I'm more than willing to talk. I'm more than willing to talk for the next hour and a half on this if you'd like, Leslie, but I know that people have to go to work today. So I want to thank you for being here. And again, the foundation is one of the greatest foundations I've been a part of. I see it as an up-and-comer nationally on wellness and resiliency within not just the state of Washington, but the nation. Thank you.